Welcome to B-Bite, where we discuss our life experiences from the ups to the downs to everything in between. This is Mario. Happy Friday, everyone. And I'm actually recording right now from London, UK on Wednesday. So I'll be traveling tonight to Iceland. So that's why I figure it's better that I try to get the recording in today before my trip starts. I guess when all my friends arrive on Friday. And so you might be wondering, like, why am I flying to Iceland today on Wednesday? It's definitely a mishap on my side where the original kind of ticket bookings that I did was based on the US time and US date. And then when I make changes to my flights to London, round trip, I have to buy another round trip ticket from London to Iceland, but I look at the wrong date. So essentially, I was supposed to fly in like super late on June 8th, but I ended up reserving the June 7th. So I'll be in Iceland like 2 days earlier than everyone, which is good to get myself acclimated to the surroundings and also get myself a little bit of rest before we go all out on the trip. 9 days in Iceland. So so far, I think it's been good visiting in Europe. Definitely, I think every time when I travel somewhere, I always miss home. Home being like US, because there are a lot of things that are very different when traveling to another country. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like a different, right? Something that I don't see in US, but actually happening in another country. So it's kind of interesting how it fares. And so yeah, this past weekend, I think I went to a city that is an hour, give or take an hour away from central London. It's called St. Albans. And from there, I went with a few friends to visit the city itself. Apparently, it's one of the oldest city, I guess, in UK. And we climbed the clock tower, visited the cathedral, which is free, and it's very humongous. It's very big. And also went to the oldest pub in Britain. So, which is interesting. I think a lot of the hidden gems that I thought I wouldn't be able to find in like random places or random city like that, apparently, it's like a little bit of surprise when I do some research. And the funny thing about the trip on the past weekend is that we were supposed to go to a city called Lincoln, which is a little bit further away compared to St. Albans. But for those who live in UK before, you probably know that, or at least in Europe before, you probably know that there were, from time to time, there will be strikes. So the worker who basically had not show up to work or, strikes. So there were train strikes for the past few days during that weekend. And so the train ticket was super expensive and not as frequent. So that's why we decided to go to somewhere closer that's a little bit cheaper to travel to, which is St. Albans. And I guess one of the big thing that's very different from US, I guess outside of New York, I guess, is that the public transportation is quite convenient here in London at least. Or if you try to go to like outskirts to other city in UK, is that you can take a high-speed rail or train that is easy to get to. Whereas US, probably have to drive everywhere. And surprisingly, I actually like after I visited Europe last year and also right now, I realized that I actually like driving more because of the convenience of like me sitting in the car and drive out right away rather than taking a bus or walk to the train station to take the train, which is a pros and cons, right? If you think about it, where if you walk to take the train, right, you get your exercise in, you get your walk in, right? And whereas if you take the car, you basically get out of your house and you take a car right away, so you barely move, I guess, if you want to look at it from that lens. Uh, but yeah, I guess it's a personal preference. I find the public transportation is much more um, well equipped compared to US. Uh, and yeah, that's kind of what I found. And so I'm actually excited to go to Iceland this coming. Well, I'm going there tonight, but the trip will start on Friday. So yeah, it's finally been talking about going to Iceland for the past 2 years now. Last year I was planning to go, but the weather was really bad, so I had to change my plan last minute. And now I finally have the chance to go. Fingers crossed. Hopefully there won't be anything that's like out of ordinary during this trip. But looking forward to the trip. Mostly we're going to the doing the kind of like Golden Ring route. Basically, the kind of like the nicer. The route is nice and well built, so it's easier to drive. In the future, I'm hoping to go back for the Highlands, which require a 4x4 car because you have to do river crossing and whatnot. Um, and in Iceland, uh, for highways that start with a letter F, you can't drive a regular car there. If you get caught, you'll be heavily fined. You have to drive 4x4 for the highway that start with the letter F. Um, and so yeah, so we are not doing the Highlands this time, but I think even then, from what I heard from my research, it seems like it's very interesting there. So we'll keep you guys posted. I'm sure you'll see a lot more of my Instagram stories, and yeah, hoping to meet with friends again and catch up and struggling together as well. I think that's the fun part of it. And so this week, I actually want to talk a little bit about the travel etiquette. So since I'm traveling and been traveling for a little bit, um, some of the stuff I'm actually still learning, right? So I'm definitely not a professional in this field in terms of traveling, but I've seen some stuff, so at least can give some thought from my side of things. And I think one thing, or at least the way I think about it, is when you travel to a country that doesn't speak the same language as you are, I think it's a common courtesy to learn a very basic word. So I mean like hello or thank you, just like very basic, right? At least it will make people feel that you are actually trying to make a connection rather than say, use English everywhere you go. Nothing wrong with using English, but I think it feels more intimate by trying to learn others' culture and then trying to learn what they do and trying to communicate with them in their language as best as possible. So I think that's the first thing I would definitely do when traveling. And then also, I think the most important part is always respect local laws. Oftentimes, I think we'll see on social media or TV and whatnot is that like uh, travelers go to another country and then they don't follow the local law, right? And then they get arrested and whatnot. Especially if you go to nature stuff, right? Always a common etiquette to like don't imagine if you go to someone else's house and you trash their place, they'll be really angry, right? And vice versa. So imagine if you visit another country, right? Try to keep it clean. Don't throw the trash where it wasn't supposed to be, right? And it sounds like very basic, but more often than not, I've seen those kind of scenario happen where people just don't care and just right trash other people's place, and as well as like when you're traveling, right, you have to respect uh, uh, the laws in the local country you're in. And another thing that I would say like that would be nice is be courteous to one another. Most of the countries I've been to, most of the locals are very welcoming of tourists. And so because of that fact, I think we also need to show compassion and just be courteous toward each other. And I feel like there are so many times when I travel, right? Just being curious, being kind, asking questions, interact with people, I get to learn a lot of things. Whereas otherwise, I wouldn't have learned just by, doing things by myself. And I would say living in hostel definitely would help kind of broaden your horizon, right? To talk to different people from different culture, potentially like planning things together and do things together. And I think that's like one way to go about it if you travel solo. Uh, Also, the local tradition, I think you need to respect as well. One thing I found that's interesting is that in Japan, it's kind of frowned upon if you walk on the street and eating at the same time. So normally if you go to like a street food or street stalls, you buy the stuff, usually eat like next to it or like, not while you're working. Um, Whereas in US, where we can probably eat while walking, like nobody will care. So yeah, some little subtle thing like that, I think would kind of help along the way. So yeah, um, and then also I would say the dress code and appropriate behavior. I think so far the countries I've traveled to, I don't have this issue of like, right, you have to wear a certain way or based on the religion and whatnot, right? But there are countries that's more conservative, that's more religious, that requires people to kind of wear more conservative, doesn't I guess like not as revealing, clothes that's not as revealing. So I think do your research before you go to specific location so that you don't really I would say like trigger anger or any kind of like mishaps during the travel. Uh, and even the photography, I think is very different where you go, right? Because some places that you visit, for example, I think Korea, Japan, I forget where, right? If you cannot have a camera on silent, so if you take a photo or something, it has to make a click sound. The reason being, right? Again, I'm not like super expert in this, but I think from what I heard is that people would take pictures of others, right, without consent and things like that. So there's a law to actually like if you try to take a picture, your camera has to make a sound. And then also I think like the general concept is to be respectful of others, right? So if you take a pictures of others, maybe you can ask for their permission, or you can wait till they are not there anymore, so you can take a picture of the background and whatnot. So yeah, and then also I think the tipping culture is really important from one country to the other. It's like a lot of the Asian country, right? There is no tipping culture, meaning when you go to a restaurant, right? There you don't have to give tip; it's already included there. In some country, it is frowned upon if you give tips. And in some countries are definitely like well appreciated, like US, right? The waiter or waitress runs on tips. They earn from tips as well, while some other countries don't. They run by salary and whatnot. Um, and yeah, I think even when you have like language barriers, I think it's always like common courtesy to kind of show respect and gratitude, even when you're interacting with locals. I think a lot of things I learned is that the world doesn't revolve around like one language, which is English. While English is like very broadly spoken or used around the world, there are countries, cities around the world that totally don't use English at all. So from that perspective, then I think it's good to, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, just learn a basic language and then try to communicate with them as best as you can. And I think oftentimes what I found is that if you try to speak in their language, like they know you're trying and they try to treat you a little bit better than usual. At least from my observation, that's how it is. Um, so yeah, let me know in the comments and whatnot of like what you guys experienced during your travel, and then like anything that I missed in terms of the travel etiquette. Uh, yeah, just traveling in general. I think I'm interested in like what other people do as well, in terms of research or what they do when they're traveling. So yeah, do let me know your perspective on it as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this week. I'm gonna keep it short because I have to pack again to Iceland. So I want to be a little bit ready as well on this time, since I'm one of the main person that planned this trip. So I want to make sure my friends all have fun during this trip. And yeah, if you like our pod, please follow us on Instagram, bbypods, or email us at bbypod@gmail.com, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Have a great weekend. Bye.